name is Daniel Voss. I am 58 years old. And 2 months ago, my mother called me the night before my sister's engagement dinner to tell me not to come. Not because I had done anything wrong. Not because there was a conflict I did not know about. She said the venue has a strict head count and it would just be easier if I sat this one out. You understand? I understood. I had been understanding for 56 years. My sister is 2 years older than me. Growing up, she was the one who got the birthday parties with the matching invitations, the one whose acceptance letter got framed in the hallway, the one my mother described to strangers as our achiever. I was just the younger one, the one who got quiet, the one who somewhere around age 12 stopped asking to be included and started building something else instead. What I built, nobody in my family ever bothered to ask about. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in my apartment in Nashville when my phone buzzed with a call from my grandmother. She never calls unless something has happened. Her voice was shaking, not with grief this time, but with disbelief. "Why didn't you tell any of us?" she said. "Tell you what, Grandma," I said. "Honey, it's in the newspaper, let me read it to you. I want to take you back before that phone call because you need to understand what 56 years of being second felt like. I grew up in a house where ambition was not shared equally. My mother had a preference the way some people prefer one color over another, and she organized her whole life around it. My sister got new clothes every school year. I got hand-me-downs until I was old enough to buy my own with money from a paper route. This is not a story about poverty. We were comfortable. It was a choice, a small one maybe, but small choices repeated for 18 years add up to something you can measure. The one thing nobody paid attention to was my palate. I know that sounds strange for a boy, but I was the kid who could tell the difference between the tomato sauce my mother made in August with garden tomatoes and the sauce she made in January from a can. I knew when a dish needed acid instead of fat. I knew when the butter was salted before anyone told me. My mother thought this was annoying. My sister thought it was strange. My father, not an unkind man, but not a perceptive one either, just thought I was picky. By 17, I knew exactly what I wanted. Real restaurant cooking, the kind where you lie. Awake at 2 in the morning, turning a sauce over in your head and write it down in the dark so you don't lose it. I told my parents when I was applying to colleges. My mother's response was to print a list of pre-law programs at 3 universities and leave it on my desk. My father said, "Cooking is a nice hobby." My sister, 19 at the time and already engaged to a man she would later divorce, said, "You'd be on your feet all day. Doesn't that sound exhausting?" I applied to the Culinary Institute anyway. I did not tell anyone until I was accepted. Even then, nobody framed that letter. I worked through the entire program, 2 part-time jobs, student loans, a shared apartment with 4 other students where we practiced on each other constantly. Tuesday nights were free for all tasting dinners and somebody was always burning something at midnight. It was the first place I had ever felt entirely at home. After graduation, I staged unpaid at 3 restaurants in New York, the way you do when you are building something and cannot afford to be impatient. Then a paid position at a French-Japanese kitchen in the West Village, under a chef who spoke almost entirely in what was wrong and almost never in what was right. He was, without question, the best teacher I ever had. 3 years later, he recommended me to a colleague opening something new in Nashville. I moved, took the sous chef position. 18 months after that, I was made head chef. The restaurant is called Wisteria. I did not tell my family, not because I was hiding, but because they had stopped asking a long time ago, and I had stopped offering things to people who did not want them. My mother knew I cooked. She described it the same way she had when I was 17. Daniel does something in restaurants. Occasionally he works in a kitchen somewhere. Once, at a family gathering I actually attended, I heard her tell a friend, "We keep hoping he'll find something more stable. You know how it is with creative types." Her friend nodded sympathetically. I smiled and went back to help with the dishes, because old habits are hard to break. My sister's engagement dinner was at Hargrove, one of the better restaurants near where my family lives, about 40 minutes from Nashville. My future brother-in-law is a pleasant, uncomplicated man who sells commercial real estate and coaches youth soccer on weekends. My sister called to tell me about the dinner, and her exact words were, "We're having a dinner at Hargrove next Saturday. I wanted you to know so you don't accidentally make other plans." I had not been invited. She was letting me know so I wouldn't feel bad about not being included. The consideration was almost kind. 2 days before the dinner, my mother sent the text about the head count. I did not respond. I went to work. Here is what I did not know that night because 2 things were happening at the exact same time that I had nothing to do with. The first, Food and Wine magazine had published their annual list of best new chefs in America that morning. I had been named to it. The profile had gone live at 8, 4 photographs and a quote I had given the writer 3 months earlier and promptly forgotten, because I am far more comfortable moving through a kitchen than sitting still and talking about myself. The quote said, "I learned to cook in a family where no one really saw me. That's probably why I cook the way I do. Everything I make to be noticed." The second, Hargrove had sourced 3 of its dishes that night from Wisteria's sister supplier, a small farm outside Nashville that we had helped put on the map. The restaurant's head of operations had eaten at Wisteria twice. She knew exactly who I was, and she had included a note with my name on the evening's menu cards. I was at work when my phone started ringing. I always ignore my phone during service, and that night was no different. Full reservation list, 2 private parties. I did not check my messages until nearly 11. 14 missed calls, 6 from my mother, 3 from my grandmother, 2 from my aunt calling from a new number, 1 from my sister, followed by a voicemail 47 seconds long that I will come back to. I sat down on the concrete step outside the kitchen's back door, still in my chef's whites, and called my grandmother first. She answered on the first ring. "Why didn't you tell any of us?" she said. And that's when I found out. She read me the entire piece, slowly, every word, while I sat in an alley at 11:15 at night holding the phone with both hands. When she finished, she said, "Honey, you are extraordinary. Do you know that?" I said, "Thank you, Grandma." She said, "I have been telling people for years you'd do something important. I just didn't know what to tell them. Now I know." I heard what happened at the dinner in pieces from my grandmother, from my aunt who called the next morning barely containing her delight, from my cousin who had gone as a +1 and sent me a voice memo at 1 in the morning. That was mostly her whispering and laughing at the same time. The menu cards were on the tables before the guests arrived, and that is when the evening started to diverge from my mother's plan. My future brother-in-law's older sister, a food writer for a regional magazine who takes restaurants very seriously, picked up her card and read the supplier note. She looked up and asked, to no one in particular, "Is anyone here related to Daniel Voss?" My mother said, "I'm sorry." She showed her the card. Daniel Voss. He was just named to the Food and Wine Best New Chef list. His restaurant supplied part of this menu. That's actually quite impressive. My mother looked at the card, looked at my sister, looked back at the card. "Voss is my maiden name," she said finally. "Is he your son?" There was a pause, my cousin says, lasted long enough to become its own kind of answer. "He's our younger one," my mother said. "He's in the food industry." By the time the first course arrived, 7 people at the far end of the table had already pulled up the article on their phones. The photograph shows me in my chef's coat, standing at the pass, not smiling exactly, but looking directly at the camera, the way someone looks when they know exactly where they are and they earned it. One of the cousins turned the screen around and showed it to my sister. "This is your brother," he said. "Yes," she said. My own cousin told me it sounded like a door closing. My mother leaned toward my future brother-in-law's mother and said in a voice that was not quite low enough, "We're very proud of him, of course. He's always been the independent one, doesn't really stay in touch. That's just his nature, you know how some children are." My aunt, who has never once in my memory stayed quiet when she had the option of speaking, said from across the table, "He stays in touch with me and with Mom, and last I heard he'd invited all of you to the restaurant twice, and nobody went." My mother's smile thinned. "That's not. And didn't he send you a reservation for your birthday last year? I remember because he called to ask for your schedule." "This is true. I had arranged for my parents and my sister to eat at my restaurant. On me." My mother said she'd think about it. They never came. The table went quiet in the specific way it does when strangers suddenly find themselves watching something they were not expecting. My future brother-in-law cleared his throat. "We'll have to make a reservation ourselves." I've heard wisteria is excellent. My sister said nothing. By the end of the night, 4 different guests had congratulated my mother on having a son who had just been named one of the best new chefs in the country. Each time she said some version of, "We're very proud," in a tone that sounded like she was reading from a script somebody had handed her 30 seconds before the curtain went up. My sister's engagement was not the main topic of conversation at her own engagement dinner. I did not do anything to make that happen. I just existed. I worked. And the work existed whether anyone was watching or not. The voicemail was 47 seconds. 5 seconds of silence, then, "I don't know how you managed to make this about yourself without even being here, but somehow you did. I hope you're happy." A pause, her voice dropping, "Food and wine, Daniel, you couldn't have told me." Then she hung up. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. I did not make anything about myself, I just did not hide. I called my grandmother back the next morning and we talked for an hour. She told me she'd been telling people for 10 years I worked at a place called Heartgrove, which does not exist. She laughed when she said it. I laughed too. She said, "I should have asked more. I should have asked you directly instead of trusting what your mother told me." I told her she hadn't done anything wrong. "Will you cook for me sometime at your restaurant?" she asked. "Grandma, I'll cook for you anywhere you want." "Good," she said, "because I think I've been missing out." My mother called 2 days after the dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was, in its own way, a small masterpiece of never quite saying the thing that needed saying. She hoped I was well. The dinner had been lovely. We should catch up sometime. And near the end, "I know we haven't always been as supportive as we could have been. I think that's just been a communication issue." A communication issue. I listened while prepping for lunch, butter going soft in the pan, garlic just starting to turn translucent. I set the phone down on the counter, and I did not call her back. My father texted a week later. He has never been a man who calls when a text is available. "Saw the article. Looks like things are going well for you. Your mother and I would like to visit sometime if you're open to it." I read it on my break, coffee going cold. It was not an apology. It was not an acknowledgement of the dinner they declined or the years of he works in a kitchen somewhere. It was just a door. Opened slightly. I sat with that text for almost 2 weeks before I answered. "I'd like that," I wrote. "Text me when you're planning to be in Nashville and I'll make a reservation. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever in the way that word usually works. But a possibility, a small one. The kind you hold with both hands the way you hold something that might break if you grip it too hard." My sister has not contacted me. I have thought about what I will say to her when she does, and I have decided I do not need a speech prepared. The truth does not need staging. It already happened. What I know is this. I spent 30 years cooking in rooms where nobody from my family came to see me. I sent invitations that went unanswered. I built a career nobody asked about, and none of it stopped me. None of it slowed me down. If anything, the silence was its own kind of freedom. Nobody was watching, so there was no one to disappoint. You build differently when you build without an audience. I am standing in my kitchen right now, 6:30 in the morning, 2 hours before my line cooks arrive. The light through the east-facing window, that particular pale gold you only get in October. The farmer's market delivery came 40 minutes ago. There's a flat of late-season strawberries on the counter, and I'm not sure what I'll do with them yet. I'll figure it out. I always do. There's a frame on the wall by the pass. I put it up 2 months ago. It holds a printout of the food and wine feature. Not because I need the validation. I know what I do. I know what it cost. I know what it took. I put it there so on the quiet mornings I can look up and remember. This happened. It was real. I built it from a place where nobody was looking. If you are in the middle of your own version of that, cooking or building or writing or doing the work nobody in your family bothers to ask about, I want to say something to you directly. It is enough to be seen by your work. It is enough to build something that knows your name even when the people who should know it don't bother to learn it. The recognition will come or it won't. The family will understand or they won't. But the thing you are building is real regardless. Don't do the work for their applause. Do it because it is honest and it is true. And somewhere in a room you haven't imagined yet, someone is going to experience it and feel exactly what you meant. That is enough. That has always been enough. The strawberries are waiting. The kitchen is mine. And for the first time in a long time, I don't need anyone's invitation to stand in the rooms I've built for myself.